The following stories are from members of Hanmaum Church in South Korea. They aired on a Korean Christian TV network called C Channel and were dubbed in English.
Hello, I'm Yong-Gu Kim from the Hanmaum Church in Chuncheon. Throughout my whole life, I could never control my temper. I tried everything I could to manage my anger without success. Then finally, the gospel took care of it. Now I no longer live as a bomb ready to explode, but as a witness of the resurrection. I like to share my story with you. When I was little, my parents ran a business. Fortunately, business was good and we lived with plenty. Then my parents co-signed a loan that went badly, and we lost everything overnight. I'm the eldest of 2 kids, and being the eldest, I had to help with the house at a young age. One day in 5th grade, I came home after playing with a friend and saw his mother hounding my mother. It turned out that my friend's mom was there to collect debt from us. As a kid, I wanted to play and have fun, but I had to help with our store, and I wasn't happy with that. Debt gave birth to more debt. Several debt collectors came to our house every day. It was amazing that they all came at different times during the day, as if they had a schedule. The store wasn't doing well. Our debt was growing, and debt collectors were getting more and more aggressive. As a young boy, I really hated seeing my parents being harassed by the debt collectors. My parents must have hated it too. My mom and dad would take turns hiding from them, so there were many times when I had to deal with the debt collectors. This was when I began to suppress and hide all of my feelings. Then I began middle school, and I was hardly ever able to pay my school fees on time. One semester before winter break, all the students who hadn't paid their school fees had to kneel in the hallway and keep their hands up in the air. It was really cold and humiliating. Gosh! They are being so harsh just because we didn't pay on time. I was so angry that I held my head up high in the air. If I didn't do at least that, I felt like it would be even more embarrassing. Fortunately, the teachers let us go, but I was so angry. At home, the debt collectors harassed me. At school, the administrators harassed me. Coping with things like this almost every day since I was a kid. My personality gradually changed. I even began to stutter. I had to put up with all kinds of insults and abuse because our family couldn't pay off our debts, which made me very angry inside. This anger built up in my heart over time. Then my anger would explode in the most random situations. It would be the smallest of things that would trigger my temper. Once I was eating with my siblings, and I got so angry at my sister that I grabbed whatever was nearby and threw it at her. It was a chopstick, and it ripped her lip, and she had to see a doctor. I beat my younger sister so much for talking back to me that she temporarily lost her mind. My younger brother had to run away from me to a friend's house far away. He was barefooted in the middle of winter when it was snowing, and when I cursed at my dad, he tried to commit suicide. Thinking about it now, I can't believe the things I did. Truly frightening anger was an anger that wasn't expressed and built up inside of you over time. When my anger was at its peak, I couldn't control myself. The person I was afraid of the most was myself, because I was so unpredictable and uncontrollable. Once my anger exploded, it was unstoppable. Surely it was me who gotten angry, but while I was venting my anger, someone else besides me took control of that rage. My mind had already calmed down, but my body would still be raging. My mom began to go to church after a debt collector evangelized to her. I also went to church in hopes that our debts could be solved, but what I felt more urgent about was fixing my temper. While attending church, I went to a prayer house and received the gift of speaking in tongues. When I received this gift, I believed in God and began to attend church more eagerly. When I worshiped and prayed diligently, it felt like my temper improved. But when I didn't, my temper would flare up again. I went to college under very difficult circumstances, but college wasn't what I expected. There were endless student demonstrations. One of my friends was even arrested for them. This was not what I had come to college for, so I dropped out. Though I had no proper skills and no college diploma, I had to be responsible for my own life and also pay back my parents' debts. Wherever I went, I was told that I was a hard worker, but because of my temper, I could never keep a job. That's why I never got any redundancy payment, which you get if you work a job for a year. I never fought with anyone, but when my anger kept piling up inside me, I would explode on my own. I tried getting treatment from a famous inner healing center in Korea, but it was useless. Going to church in this state wore me out. Then I got married and had 2 children. One day, my wife suggested that I join a missionary organization to try to fix my temper. That's because I had been fired around that time. My parents and siblings always said, "Everything is great about you except for that temper of yours." That's because so many times, family gatherings started out happy but ended in disaster because of me. Now my wife was telling me the exact same thing. Once I took my pregnant wife to my brother's wedding, but the traffic was so bad that I lost my temper. In the car, I screamed at the top of my lungs and shouted every kind of curse word like a madman. Afterwards, I didn't even feel human. Every time I did this, my wife had a hard time. My wife was sweet and innocent before our marriage, but she turned into a goddess of anger even worse than me. Even my son said, "Dad, the only thing you need is to fix your temper." This was difficult to bear. How was it that I even had to hear things like this from my young son? Then I went to a conference called Back to the Gospel with my wife. There, we came across Hanmaum Church for the first time. During the sermon, the pastor of Hanmaum Church showed us a video clip of his church members, and it really shocked me. It was about a principal who repented in tears for transferring troublemaking students to another school instead of loving them as if they were his own children. The moment I saw this clip, I felt a sliver of hope. I couldn't tell you what it was specifically, but I felt like there was something about Hanmaum Church. Then I had an opportunity to go to Japan as a short-term missionary. I had hoped that my temper would improve if I did missionary work. So I took all my savings and went to Japan as a missionary, but my temper remained the same. Why am I still like this when I put so much effort and sacrifice into fixing myself? I felt like there was no more hope, and I didn't feel like living anymore. I gave up on everything and just laid in bed for 2 months. Then my wife gave me a book that a lady from Hanmaum Church had given her. My wife had constantly talked about that lady after coming back from the Back to the Gospel conference. I remembered my wife talking about how that lady had declared the gospel with total certainty. So I began to read the book. When I came to the part that talked about believing in Jesus as your Lord, I thought, this is it. I knew about the resurrection and sin, but believing in Jesus as my Lord was new to me. So I began to attend a Hanmaum Church small group meeting near us. Since I was so desperate, I revealed all of my embarrassing weaknesses to the group members on my very first day. That's because I felt sure about this church after reading that book. But on the other hand, I thought, what good can come out of these well-to-do ladies who look like they don't have a care in the world? I thought I had faith, too, but they keep talking about the resurrection. Even non-believers knew about the resurrection. So I was puzzled as to why they kept emphasizing it. I thought that a groundbreaking change would happen to me if I attended the small group, but I went back every week and I didn't see any progress. The group leader just kept telling me to write testimonies, and during every worship meeting, the well-to-do ladies would cry over their own testimonies. Everyone was crying except me, and I felt really awkward, but it was too late to quit. I had to find out what the resurrection was about. I tried and tried to control myself, but my temper was still with me. One time, I argued in the car with my wife on the way to worship. Then I got out of the car and walked home. I had to walk home for 10 hours in the winter. My temper only made me really cold. Also, I once had a big fight with my small group leader over a very small issue, so I left the church for 3 months. That was when strange things began to happen. My 6-year-old second child was slow in learning to talk, and he had a hard time with kindergarten, so he stayed home with me since I didn't have a job. He kept watching a 3-minute video clip of my pastor at the Back to the Gospel conference on the computer. Then he began to imitate him. When the Almighty God came and went from this earth, he would have left something behind. Do you believe that he left a sure proof behind? The resurrection? Do you hope in the resurrection? My son repeated these same words all day long. And when it was time for the small group meeting on Saturday, he would urge me to hurry up and go. Before, he would only say things like, "Dad, no, and I'm not eating." But now, it was amazing to hear him speak such long sentences. But hearing my son say the same words every day for 3 months, it sounded as if the Lord was telling me to return to church. So I did, and I thought that if I came back to church, things would get solved quickly. But time passed and nothing happened. All this time, I thought I believed in Jesus. I just thought that my temper was the only thing giving me a hard time. But under these circumstances, the only thing I could do was to kneel before the Lord. Lord, please help me to meet you. The risen Lord, please save me. I prayed wholeheartedly to the Lord like this, and thankfully he answered my prayer. Through a testimony that a sister read during a small group meeting, all of God's word that I had heard so far came together and made sense. Then I could understand the resurrection. Through the resurrection, God gave us proof so that we could believe, but I had depended on other things to believe in him. I thought that you believed in Jesus through feelings, emotions, and spiritual gifts. But that was not faith. When the resurrection became reality in me, I wondered, what did I believe in all this time? Through the resurrection, God gave proof to all men so that we can believe in Jesus as God and in all the words in the Bible. Also, Jesus was raised from the dead to be my Lord. Even though Jesus was raised from the dead, to give us the proof that everyone can believe, I had not believed in Jesus, and I had still been my own master. The reason life was difficult was not because of my temper, but because I did not believe in Jesus. I had gotten angry, not because of bad situations, but because I hadn't believed in Jesus. This was the heart of the devil who betrayed God. So I repented the sin of not believing in Jesus and accepted Jesus as the Lord of my heart. I thought my temper would disappear when I accepted Jesus as my Lord, but I still had anger, and this confused me. The Bible said that it was my old self inside of me that was doing the evil things I didn't want to do. I had been confused because I still had a temper even though I had met the risen Lord. But the temper in me was from my old self, not from the new creation I am now. 2,000 years ago, my old self had already died on the cross with Jesus. But during my entire life, the devil had completely deceived me into living as if my old self was my true self. The reason my life hadn't changed on a basic level was because I hadn't believed that my old self was dead through the resurrection. Instead, I had tried to believe my old self's death based on how less I was acting like my old self. Basically, I had the wicked heart of not believing in Jesus, who had fulfilled everything for me. So through the resurrection, I believed that my old self was dead. And when I declared this in faith and kept moving forward, my life finally began to change.
Amen.
One morning, I was standing before the risen Lord. Standing before the risen Lord, I saw that myself was so filthy, the filthiest. I was so sorry that the Lord had come into such filthy heart, and I wept from the bottom of my heart. Lord, please leave me. I'm a sinner. I cried out like this from my heart. But the Lord accepted me just as I was, and told me that he loved me as he always did. Then the grace of being a new creation came over me. What an amazing being I am! How holy I am! I realized that, although I lived in this flesh at the moment, I was already a citizen of heaven. So there was nothing on this earth that can separate me from the love of Christ. This grace was overwhelming. The truth was that I was holy enough to be one with my Creator Jesus, and this fact made my heart burst with joy. The fact that I was a new creation, that was united with Jesus, made me crazy with joy. I overflowed with the Lord's joy and peace, regardless of the circumstances I saw around me. Jesus solved not only the issue of my temper, but all of my problems in life, and He made me a witness of the resurrection. Amen. I never really shared the gospel before, but now that Jesus' resurrection is so certain to me, I naturally live as a witness of the resurrection. Believing in Jesus as my Lord strengthened my life and made it very simple. Now the whole family comes together on holidays to give worship, and I proclaim the gospel to them. Every time we do this, I hear from my family that I have changed. Near the end of one worship, the Lord gave me the heart to apologize to my family. So I bowed my head and apologized with all of my heart. I said, "You must have suffered a lot because of me. I knew that I shouldn't have acted the way I did, but I couldn't behave the way I really wanted to. So I tried everything to fix this temper. Then I found the answer. It was the gospel. All this time, I was my own master, and I did not believe in Jesus. Though I was given the unfailing proof of the resurrection, I was still my own master, so I couldn't help but act less than human. But now my Lord is Jesus. Amen. My life and possessions belong to Jesus. Therefore, I have peace." Amen. With these words, I apologized to my family. Then they comforted me and told me that I had changed. Then they sincerely listened to the gospel again, and my hope grew for them. Now when I am stuck in traffic, I am at peace. I always used to ruin my family's events, but now my family members laugh and enjoy themselves because of me. Our gatherings begin and end in happiness. My wife, whose temper used to be worse than mine, became eternally one with me through the gospel, and she has become a woman of virtue. My son, who used to say, "Dad, you just need to fix your temper," now says, "Dad, you just need to fix my bike." The gospel did it all. Amen. The gospel was enough. Amen. I give all the glory to the Lord, for nothing in this world was able to change me from being a fiery ball of rage. But He changed me, and I will live the rest of my life only for the Lord and the gospel. Thank you.
If you'd like to see more stories about how the gospel changed lives, visit us at facebook.com/HMUOnlyJesus or Google us at HMU Only Jesus.